58 Gerome Street may look like any other Brooklyn brownstone, but looks can be a bit deceiving. Let's start with those windows completely blacked out. Now, maybe the tenants just don't want to see any light, they're vampires, but also there's no basement, there's no windows to look in from the street level, which is common in every other townhouse on this block. And there's another clue here, NYC Transit wet standpipe system, Gerome Street tube 4-5 line. This building is actually a ventilator for the subway, and it's entirely fake, but let's get to the history of it. So it was actually built as a private residence in 1847 in the Greek Revival style. The Interborough Rapid Transit Company acquired it in 1907, gutted the interior, and converted it into its current role as a ventilator for the subway. Now, the exterior facade, as you see it right now, this was part of a 1999 agreement with the Landmarks Preservation Commission to help it blend into the neighborhood. It's not an eyesore like some of the other fake buildings that you will see later on in the video. This is not just a New York phenomenon. Paris and London also have fake houses that serve the same purpose as subway ventilators. 168 feet below here is a Gerome Street tunnel, which has the 2 and 3 lines connecting Manhattan over to Brooklyn. And again, that need for ventilation is present. And little known fact, this door right here is actually an emergency exit for staff underground. And you can even see on there, it says EE001. Wonder if that stands for emergency exit. Also, you notice there's no doorbell whatsoever. This may be one of the most expensive fake buildings in the entire world. Now, in 2010, it was valued at $2.8 million. And 2 years ago, the townhouse next door at 60 Gerome sold for $6 million. So in New York, you're paying for location, and this is a very expensive location to live in Brooklyn Heights. This building behind me at 33 Thomas Street in Lower Manhattan, Tom Hanks called the scariest building he's ever seen. Officially, it's known as the AT&T Long Lines building, although from the outside, that brutalist architecture, it looks like it'd be more comfortable in some ex-Soviet capital. The first thing you may notice is, how does a 29-story skyscraper not have any windows? And at night, with the lights off, it looks completely spooky. The only sign that there's any life inside, outside of the cars parked, are the vents. We did see some smoke coming out of them. That's it. You can't look inside. This was designed by John Carl Warnke in 1974 as a skyscraper to be inhibited by machines and designed to house Long Line's telephone equipment to protect its operating personnel in the event of an atomic attack. So this is red Swedish granite, which is heat resistant. And as I mentioned, it was built without a single vulnerable window. Warnke's original plan stated that it would provide food, water, and recreation for 1,500 people. It would also store 250,000 gallons of fuel to power generators, which would enable it to become a self-contained city for 2 weeks in the event of an emergency power failure. The blueprints for the building show that it was to include 3 subterranean levels, including a cable vault where telecommunications cables likely entered and exited the building from under Manhattan's bustling streets. Now, all they have at the front is an intercom and somebody sitting at a desk. This is not a bustling office building that you see people constantly coming and going. In fact, I haven't seen anybody walk in the last 15 minutes. Now, there's a lot of speculation out there about what's actually going on inside, and famed whistleblower Edward Snowden said this is Titan Point, which is used by the NSA for active surveillance of the American public of phone calls and data. In this article from The Intercept, it says secret NSA travel guides dated April 2011 and February 2013 reveal info about Titan Point that helps establish its connection to 33 Thomas Street. The guide, written to assist NSA employees visiting various facilities, discloses that Titan Point is in New York City, and the guide states that a partner called Lithium, which is NSA's code name for AT&T, supervises visits to the site. And the fact that 33 Thomas Street is located almost next door to the FBI's New York field office, about a block away at Federal Plaza, that's interesting. What actually goes on inside of here is a bit of a mystery, as even some of the technicians who have been inside admit to not having full access to every single floor. If only these walls could talk. But there is one giant similarity between 33 Thomas and the other fake buildings in this video. The vents. Subway vents or vents for something else? All in play. I've definitely walked by this a lot of times when I used to live near here, and I never even paid attention to it. This facade at Mulberry Square in Greenwich Village, it just looks like an incomplete building. Maybe they're using a little bit of reverse psychology with this fake building, because if you wanted to blend into the background of New York, showing a half-finished looking building, people might think it's just under construction if it wasn't sitting like this for the last 9 years. What's actually going on here, underneath you have emergency exhaust fans for the 7th and 8th Avenue subway lines that run directly underneath it. And the Landmark Preservation Commission actually approved this. I mean, if you look at it, it's quite the eyesore. You have some brick, you have some areas that don't have brick. It looks like a concrete bunker. And interestingly enough, the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation tried to improve the facility's design of this. They wanted it to look pretty, to fit into Greenwich Village, but to no avail. This is what it looks like, and this is what it's going to continue to look like as a fan for the subway beneath. Immediately after 9/11 happened, this fence here was the site for a touching tribute called Tiles for America, and you can see that the tiles for over 20 years are still here. And there's messages from people all over the world feeling for New York City. So I say do come to visit this. This is one of the most somber memorials in New York. You know, in the days after the attacks, people were putting photos of their missing loved ones here, and eventually the ceramic tiles began to replace it, first from local artists, and then from all over the world. There's a whole section of fake buildings in the city that were or are currently being used as subway substations. Now, substations were part of the power supply network and built before the modern power grid was developed. The original 8 IRT substations all had Beaux-Arts faces, so they'd blend into the landscape, and of the original 8, only 1 is still in service. Now, these went up during the nationwide City Beautiful movement, which came with a message that cities should aspire to aesthetic value for their residents. If you were walking by 108 East 19th Street, you probably wouldn't really flinch. I mean, yeah, there's some graffiti here. You see 2 garage doors, and the only clue that something might be a little bit different is if you look at the sign. No parking, New York City Transit. This was built in between 1902 and 1904, and it was designed by John Van Vleck and Paul C. Hunter in Italian Renaissance Revival style with the Beaux-Arts detailing that we mentioned. It was one of those 8 original electrical substations of New York's first subway line, which converted AC current from the power plant into DC for use on the subway. And it's just a relic sitting here. But if you look up at the windows, you'll notice how beautiful they are. Look at the tiled designs. And then also look at the windows, how dusty they are, and how they look like they haven't been cleaned in ages. There's a lot of beautiful things hidden in plain sight in New York, and this building here is a prime example. We're cheating just a little bit with this one, because if you actually looked up and read, it says City of New York, Greenwich Substation, and you know, this is really beautiful. Designed in the Art Deco style between 1930 to 1932. It's clad in brick and limestone and features attractive geometric patterns throughout and on the large aluminum loading bay doors. So if you just walked by here, you probably wouldn't pay much attention to this. I think for a split second, maybe I thought it was a church from the exterior, but no, there is, I believe, an active substation still hidden inside. And just an example of what they were trying to do with the beautification of New York. It just looks like a giant door to nowhere. That's hard, that's solid. And this is the access door here. Again, this is the commonality between all of the fake buildings, is access door for employees. And these substations, a perfect example that has stood the test of time here. We've gone from fake buildings in reality, but what about cinema portraying New York? You may have heard of 177A Bleecker Street, the Sanctum Sanctorum, where Doctor Strange lives. Any fans of Marvel? Well, this is as close as we get. 177 Bleecker. It's stuck between a tattoo and a smoke shop. And, well, it's not exactly what it looks like from the movie. The truth is, Roy Thomas, a writer-editor for Marvel, showed a telegram being delivered to Dr. Stephen Strange, MD, at 177A Bleecker Street in the 1969 comic Doctor Strange 182. Since Thomas lived at 177 Bleecker for a brief time in the mid-60s, as did Marvel artist Bill Everett. While in reality it's just an apartment building, there is a cute Easter egg. If you go to Google Maps and you type in Sanctum Sanctorum, it will send you here. You know what? I think I'm gonna take a shortcut home through this inconspicuous alley right here. We've talked so much about buildings on this video, but I just had to throw in Cortlandt Alley because if you watch New York on TV and in movies, you may think this is a city just full of alleys like this. Boston is a city of alleys. Philly, Chicago, even Vancouver, but New York? Not really. Manhattan has maybe 5 of these alleys left. Now, we need to backtrack for a second because the Commissioner's Plan of 1811, regarded as the single most important document in New York City's development, was a major effort to optimize and maximize the city's real estate. Now, the plan created 155 streets and 12 avenues intersecting at right angles, leaving out alleys by design. Filming is not allowed in most of New York's alleys, which leaves Cortlandt Alley as that standby for all the location scouts who want to portray New York as a city that's full of them. I mean, it is interesting to walk by. It's got kind of a grimy vibe when in reality this is an extremely wealthy area. You know, if I was a tourist and you just dropped me here without any context whatsoever, I would think I stepped into some 1980s crime film. A list of some movies and TV shows which have been filmed here: Men in Black, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Out of the Shadows, that's no shock to me. Highlander, Gotham, Kate and Leopold, Boardwalk Empire, 9.5 Weeks. Law and Order, like every episode, there's a dead body painted somewhere on the ground. I've filmed here before and seen police chalk here. NYPD Blue, and I don't know how or why, but the Smurfs, that one's a little random. Also, Casey Neistat has filmed a lot of his vlogs here as well. In reality, instead of being a seedy alleyway, you've got art galleries and restaurants here. And I have to say, some of the most beautiful fire escapes I've ever seen in New York. I understand why they film here, they've got good taste. All right, if you enjoyed this deep dive into New York's fake buildings and you want to check out the video we shot in Roosevelt Island, which many consider one of New York's best kept secrets we explore with a local, watch this next.